in. It's going to be directed at Joseph. What's a hypothetical pet project you would like GPSA to take on next year that you haven't really gotten a chance to talk about yet during the campaign?
Hypothetical pet project. I like to be creative, and I would hope that most of, I like to be creative, and I would hope that I can think on the fly with a lot of things, but a lot of the ideas that I've presented in the campaign are things that I'm ready to hit the ground running with the idea that the structure of GPSA needs to change, and immediately working on the connections and rebuilding the connections that have been broken between GPSA and the rest of the university. But as far as was the term pet project? A pet project. I think that pet projects are interesting, but I think that there's something that needs to be cautioned with them, because I think often things that are thought through hastily, which the idea of a pet project is, in my opinion, I think that there can be some concerns about that, because if you want to do something, especially with an organization as large and important and influential as GPSA, I think it's important to think through it thoroughly. And personally, to me, a pet project would be a personal initiative. And besides the ideas that I have that are not only my own, but that have been presented through the concerns of lots of students around campus, I think that pet projects should be cautioned, and I think I would probably avoid the idea that a pet project is something that would be started kind of ad hocly, last minute, and not well thought out. But that doesn't mean I'm opposed to the idea that GPSA can't do small projects on the side. I think GPSA needs to work more, like we've started a ASU&M GPSA collaboration task force. I think those types of pet projects are really good. And I really can't think of one specific pet project, because I think that those are things that shouldn't be necessarily promoted by one person, and they should get consensus from everyone else. So I don't necessarily have a pet project, but I do have specific plans to make GPSA more inclusive, to incorporate the council more, to build ties with the university, and to reduce spending within GPSA, because I think that's a huge problem. So I guess my main pet project would be thinking on my feet in a creative way to make the organization and the structure of GPSA work more towards students and more towards the core purpose of what the organization was founded for in the first place.
Okay. Kate.
So I'm sure you're all familiar with, unpet projects of mine. Let's fight increases in tuition and fees. Let's make sure that we have increased research resources as graduate and professional students. Let's maintain our TA and GA jobs. Those aren't pet projects. And there's something, I agree with Joseph, but there's something about the word pet project that makes it feel like, oh, I've got some idea and I'm going to just go running off without student support. And I'm not going to do that on any issue. But I do have an idea, now that you've asked, for an idea to enhance the pipeline from undergraduate level education to graduate student level education. What we need to make sure to do as a community is make sure that the undergraduates think of graduate school as an option. And this is something that PNMGC in particular has been excellent at doing for graduate students of color and for undergraduates of color, making sure that graduate school is an option. And I heard a statistic today that 50% of our undergraduate population are students of color, but it drops to half of that, something less than 25% are graduate students of color. So, what I'd love to do is see what GPSA can do for mentoring. And seriously, I just thought this up as Joseph was talking. So, obviously we need to build consensus. We need to think about the networks. What is PNMGC doing? We wouldn't want to replicate what work they're doing. But I think that there's an opportunity to reach out to the students, who are considering, what should I do with my career? Is graduate school in some department a nice choice, and will it benefit me? And so I'm thinking that we might be able to build a network of mentors who are willing to reach out to students for their specific discipline, and make sure that we don't lose graduate students of color, that we don't lose women along the way. Certainly in physics and astronomy, where I'm from, there are fewer and fewer women the higher you go in that department. And I'm sure that's true in the other sciences and engineering as well. I mean, there are sort of systematic problems that we might be able to address if we create an undergraduate and graduate mentoring program. Yeah, That's my thought right now. So let's talk about it afterwards, if anyone's interested.
Lucy.
I don't have a pet project. I do have a vision. And my vision is to see GPSA exemplify what we mean when we talk about collaboration and building coalitions. I want us to be able to set the mechanisms in place, the processes in place, to be able to demonstrate that we can coalesce, that we can plan, and with my leadership and with my vision that we can come together with common agenda, that we can create priorities, that we can develop the plan, but more importantly, with my leadership, we can execute and implement the plan. That's what's really important. We have got to demonstrate and solidify the relationships that we are bonding and building with the ASUNM, because we've pledged to do that. I've pledged to do that. I have begun meeting with ASUNM as well in the task force to find the ways to solidify our relationship. I said earlier that we need to find ways to bring the departments and the schools together. GPSA can go. We don't have to stay and have our meetings in one place. We can go to the School of College of Education. We can come to the law school. We can go to the medical school. And we can reach out and demonstrate through action, through having something in place that we in fact can act cohesively, collaboratively, and come up with priorities and common agendas. That process is so very important to be able to avoid the pitfalls and the divides that have kept us from being able to progress. We know what the issues are. We know what the concerns are. We've been addressing them not only as candidates, but we've been addressing them as student bodies. We can talk tuition hikes, we can talk increase in fees, we can talk about protecting graduate research, but the real issue is, how are we going to demonstrate? How are we going to put those mechanisms in place? That's what takes leadership. That's what takes vision, knowing what mechanisms, what processes to put in place, and how to make them work, and then turning around and delivering on the plan. That's the most important thing, because when we leave this administration, when I leave this administration as GPSA president, I want to look back and I want to have what I've set up jointly with everyone else at the table be there 10 years from now, because that is the mechanism by which we have created the dialogue that's going to create the changes to address the multiple issues that we've been describing all along. Thank you.
Jake.
You know, throughout this campaign, we've been talking about collaboration and transparency, and it's, can be buzzwords at times, and what do those things actually mean when they're put into practice? And I mean, I get a sense from the institutional history that between the council and the president, ASUNM and GPSA, there's been some difficult working relationships. At the end of the day, I promise you, as a leader, I just think it's bad business to take a confrontational approach when you're working on things. I think that you really do make the best progress when you put the people in the room who need to be in the room and you work together in an open and honest way. That's just how I like to do business in my business life, and how I'll hope to do business as GPSA president. But at the end of the day, I'll be very clear for all of you and for you who are watching that I have an agenda and I have ideas. And I think that when you're voting on a president, you're not just voting on someone who can lead a meeting or be a facilitator, because a facilitator doesn't put forward their own positions. They just facilitate other people's discussion. I think that you want a leader, and you want someone who's going to put forward an idea. And here's one of the ideas that I haven't had time to talk about, but I'll talk about with you now. And that's this notion of making graduate school pay. I'm concerned that graduate students in New Mexico leave their institutions with more debt than their peers nationally. And I'm seriously concerned that as a state, we continue to export our talent. We educate a great crop of people in this state, and then we send them off to other parts of the country and the world. And I think that as GPSA president, I want to start a discussion on this campus about how we seriously work towards reversing these trends. Number one, I think I'd like to call upon the university administration to partner with graduate students and other stakeholders to really take a look at the root causes of the skyrocketing debt load among its graduate student population. It's not an issue that's on anybody's radar right now at the institutional level, and I think that we can make significant progress this coming year if we actually make that an action step for the administration, is facing the problem up front and talking about ways we can actually go about solving the issue. Number two, I would love to see this state follow the example of 10 other states, Europe and Canada, and make graduate student stipends exempt from state income tax. I think it's a common sense way to reduce the cost of attendance to graduate students, and I think it'd be a great recruitment incentive when you look at our state versus other states in the Southwest region. And number three, I really think that us university needs to take a look at how it markets its graduate student capital at the institutional level. All of our departments have career service representatives and have these different activity fairs, but how are we as an institution actually marketing our product? And that's one of the most important things I want to bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, I think people need to look at GPSA as an organization that works on the issues that matter to them. And in this economy, what issue matters most than who's going to pay my bills when I graduate with my degree? And that's the idea that I'm going to push as president.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Go ahead, Tristan.
So this is a hard definition. I was thinking a little bit about pet projects. And there is one specific thing that I have been thinking about for a long time that isn't a direct issue that I've been working on and advocating for in this campaign, and that is the collaboration specifically with 3 main student leaders on campus and the Daily Lobo, the source of a lot of information for people around campus. And this would include the GPSA president, the ASU&M president, and the student regent. And if I was elected, one of the first things that I would like to do, that is something I guess you could call a pet project, is to sit down with the new editor of the Daily Lobo and talk a little bit more about how we can provide more accurate information for the student body at UNM. I've been a student at UNM for a long time, and I have been troubled by the lack of communication to the student body. And I don't necessarily criticize the Lobo for it all the time, but I think that it's just, there are more opportunities for those 3 students to sit down with the newspaper, the student body, and work together more to bring more information to the student body so they can be more informed. So that would be definitely one of my big pet projects I look forward to.
Anyone else? All right, well, now we're going to open it up to closing statements. We're going to start off with Katie.